Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the best magic build for Beast in Divinity Original Sin 2. Our noble pirate here has sailed the seas, which makes me think that he's likely able to control some of it with the Hydrosophist and Aerotheurge skills we'll be going with here. Now, honestly, this is pretty powerful as terms of a crowd controller. It's not going to have as much raw damage as a pyrokinetic style build, but it's honestly quite strong. And with moves like the global cooling here, we can set up a lot of difficult terrain when comboed with rain here. We can heal ourselves, we can freeze targets, and what's great about this is we are an absolute beast when it comes to setting up some different types of crowd control, whether it be surfaces or just outright shocking and freezing targets. And whoever is not frozen, we can always go ahead with an icicle crash here, the hail strike, and this can sometimes end up freezing them as well if you line it up correctly. And since we're considered on a water surface here, we can go ahead with the elemental affinity to cast Winter Blast here, which is a large area of effect damage option, which can potentially even freeze too. We got a nice crit off there. And then on our second turn, we can then go ahead with casting Rain again here, and we are lucky to get some more crowd control off on the team. And what's great about this is once we have the wet status applied, we can go ahead with something like the superconductor here, which we can end up hitting a ton of targets with, and then going and stunning them again. So absolutely crazy crowd control. Now the attribute scores that we'd like to go with. I found that a memory around 19 is you get to the later section of Act 2, works really well. You can go with a little bit less as you're working your way up here. Intelligence being our main stat for attacking with our Aerotheurge and our Hydrosophist skills. I also have 2 points into strength here just to be able to equip certain gear. Again, that really depends on what kind of gear rolls you get. Sometimes you need a little finesse, but that's what we'll roll with. Now, our skills, this is important. Now, I like to obviously go around Hydrosophist. In the past, Aerotheurge has the higher damage options, but Hydrosophist skills are also quite fun. And since the Hydrosophist healing doesn't scale off of our intelligence if we wanted to heal, which isn't really the best option in Divinity Original Sin 2, well, still nice. It's good to have this up high, and this will also give additional magic armor from skills and potion, which is nice too, so we can provide our team with all of that. And the Aerotheurge skills, obviously, we want to get this up as quick as possible. We got 10 points in this, and I got a bunch of gear that's Hydrosophist. Got really lucky with that, and not so much on the Aerotheurge there, but Necromancer is another nice one to have for the extra being able to sustain yourself and keep our critical hit chance very high. But honestly, just go with a lot of Hydrosophist and Aerotheurge. I'd probably start off with like 2 points Hydrosophist and 1 point Aerotheurge, and then work your way up 1 point each. And a preference on Hydrosophist, but Aerotheurge will get you more damage. As for our talents, now there is some interesting things we can do. If we got a, if we were able to use a staff, this counts as our offhand being free, which means that we can use grenades and scrolls for the cheap, 1 action point less cost, which is honestly quite nice. Now, there are some scrolls that we do like to grab, like the Rain scroll is not a bad one to have on everybody for the setup on this team, but getting ambidextrous off just means we can use some of the more powerful skills a little bit cheaper. So buy a lot of stuff. Elemental affinity though is the most important one here. Like this is the top priority. This will make it so that when we cast Rain, a 1 action point cost, we can then go ahead with casting more Hydrosophist skills for 1 action point less, which pays for itself on the first spell you cast, in addition to the Rain and surfaces you set up with the Rain, which makes everyone take more damage. I like to have the Far Out Man, so this increases the range of skills and scrolls by 2 meters. It actually pairs very well with everything we got here, because we can stick to a certain area of the map and get all the benefits of this. So this is a really nice one, just worth having. Hothead, however, is great because we're going to have a lot of sustain and magic armor regeneration so that we can have maximum vitality to give 10% crit chance on our attacks. And this will get added onto our spells here with the Savage Sortilege. You kind of want to have all these together here. Priority being Elemental Affinity, and then probably Savage Sortilege, and then Hothead, Far Out Man, Ambidextrous. But this one here will give our crit chance equal to, basically we want to find staves or wands, and dual wield wands that give us crit chance because they're now added to our spells, which is actually crazy. Because it is pretty easy to get in Act 2 a 30 to 37% crit chance, which means that you're going to be critting in 1 in 3 spells. Some other talents that are very good is the 5-star Diner. Now, this is crazy because it's going to double up potions, making you regenerate some healing. This is probably the best talent in the game, but it costs a lot of money to make the best use of it. Mnemonic is pretty good early on in the game, which will give us additional memory attribute. And Living Armor, since we're healing, we can get a bunch of magic armor, although this is nice on the team as well. And as far as the skills go, now, I like to have a Restoration, just a really solid heal for a 1 action point cost, which will give us 332 vitality for 2 turns, which is honestly kind of nice, especially if the target has living armor, which will give them a bit more of that sustain. Now, Healing Ritual is nice too. I was just standing in water, which gives it that 1 action point cost. It has a slightly better heal than Restoration, and it'll chain to nearby allies, but unless you're standing in water, it's going to have a 2 action point cost, so it's only It's not really something I use often, but if you have water set up, it's nice for the 1 action point heal. Now, healing is not the best use for action economy. It's best to crowd control them, and that's what this build really succeeds at. Now, you can see here, this one will set shield for 2 turns. This one, it's shield for 1 turn. This for 2 turns. The hailstorm and a few others give us all the chilled, which is important. And basically what chilled does is the target gets 35% less movement speed, 30% less dodge rate, 10% less air resistance, and 20% less water resistance, so we can do water and arrow spells and deal a bit more damage. But the thing is, if a target's chilled and gets chilled again, then they freeze. This is what we want to set up. And you can actually get lucky with some of the abilities that we can overlap them and get them to sometimes hit a few times. So things like the Winter Blast, Ice Fan, Hail Strike, Hailstorm, and Global Cooling are all the chilled skills that we have. Global Cooling being a nice one to start with. It only has a single action point cost, but it can create those ice surfaces, which is great because those can also freeze and make enemies slip, which will lose their turn with. Now, if you played Baldur's Gate 3, it's one of my favorite strategies. It's just as good here. Now, I really like to go with the Hailstorm skill as well for our source, as this is a very powerful one. It's obviously whenever we get the 2 or the 3 action point cost. Thunderstorm is another good one. It's honestly between those two, and I also like to go with something like the Chain Lightning. I typically, if I'm going to run them, just run Chain Lightning and spam that skill, but it's entirely your call. And it's even worth going ahead and taking Chain Lightning there. Just have 2, but if you don't want one, remove Hailstorm and just spam that one. But now for our Aerotheurge skills. This also brings some utility to the team like Nether Swap. You can give a teammate, if you have someone on your team that wants high ground really bad, like a Pyrocaster, or if you got a Ranger on your team, you can use this to give them the high ground really easily. It's a 1 action point cost. There's also things like the teleportation, which is 2 action point cost, but this is great outside of combat as well, because you can teleport someone somewhere and then swap places with them. It's good. These 2 are our utility-based skills here. The rest of them are mostly damage focused. I guess also Uncanny Evasion, 1 action point cost, increased dodging by 90% and movement speed by 20. This is just good to be able to keep someone alive for a turn. You can cast this on anyone within 15 meters. And kind of the way that we want to be using the rest of these. So Pressure Spike is a 1 action point cost. This is good if you're not on a surface here and you want to deal a bit of damage. It'll also get rid of fire. And we also want to have things like the Blinding Radiance, so enemies that are nearby take a bit of damage, but we also blind them. This one does not get resisted by any type of armor, so that's kind of nice. Shocking Touch is another really good skill, so this will shock the target for 2 turns. This is actually really nice because you can shock enemies. Now, Shocked is the same kind of concept as Chilled. Whenever you shock one time, you shock them again, they're then stunned, which means that they don't have their turn, kind of similar to Frozen. So this applies for 2 turns. Dazing Bolt here will do it for 1 turn from range. This does have a 3 action point cost that can be reduced down, but this one is really nice because it gives you shock from range. Now, Divinity Original Sin, the Definitive Edition did change how these work from the base game, but it's still really nice that you're able to get it for 2 turns here. Things like Electric Discharge here will deal damage and set shock for 1 action point cost. So if you can chain a few of these together, you can actually take out enemies. One other good one, which you saw at the start of the video, is Superconductor, which will deal air damage and shock enemies in a large area of effect, although this is resisted by magic armor, so just something to keep in mind, whereas the Blind from Blinding Radiance is not. You want to basically get the magic armor down, then try to shock them with a bunch of these. And then we also have things like Chain Lightning too, which will shock enemies for a variety of turns, and it can hit up to 8 different targets. It's pretty powerful. So typically we want to be trying to strip magic armor, either freezing or setting up surfaces. Typically ice is going to be the preferred method because that can make enemies slip too, but then getting shocked off on the others. Now some other skills that you could take are things like Soothing Cold, which give magic armor over 3 turns for a 1 action point cost. There's also Armor of Frost, which can give a good boost to the magic armor of a target. This will also remove Frozen, Stun, Poison, and Petrified, which is actually a really good choice. So you could just as easy enough remove the Hailstorm skill and then add these ones on with the extra freedom you get. Icebreakers, okay, it can explode ice, which will chill targets. It can kind of have sometimes uses, same as Thunderstorm. Bit random with how it works, which will just clear off surfaces. And reveal invisible creatures, so there's some points in the game where it's nice. There's also things like the apportation, which is useful, but more so outside of combat related type stuff. And there's also Deep Freeze, which can freeze targets and actually do some pretty crazy stuff as well, but it has a very high cost. And there's also like Cryogenic Stasis here, which makes a target immune to all damage and heal over time. If there's a target with Shackles of Pain that's getting screwed up, you can cast this on them. And Bless is not a bad option to have as well in a build like this. And when it comes to combat now, the first turn is mostly focused on trying to crowd control. You're likely not going to have to heal anyone, but you do have some skills, like if you end up with a single action point left, you can put like Evasion, Uncanny Evasion on a target, but Typically, the best thing to do is set up with rain. If you have another teammate with scrolls, they can also cast away and get that up for us, and then we can go ahead with something like global cooling, which then turns that rain into surfaces. So we can go ahead with that. We're chilling a ton of targets here, and what's great is that we were able to get a freeze off on a couple of them there, but chilled on every other target. Now, actually, we got a couple frozen, but if we didn't get any of them frozen here, we can then go ahead with something like the ice fan here, which is going to have a cone-like projectile, which we can shoot at multiple targets just like this. So we can break that out and got a crit off on one of them. And that was enough, so we can start with a hail strike here. Now, you can press the O key to be able to get like an actual tactical top-down perspective of this and be able to hit multiple off of a target, which is going to be good because sometimes you can then either take them out or end up freezing them solid, which is what we wanted because you'll have those 3 hitting them at once. And if you have another caster in your team, Cleanse Wounds is kind of funny because this will hurt undead, and then it creates a water puddle below them, so it stacks well. And when your Hydro skills are on a cooldown, you can then go ahead with some of our more powerful Aerotheurge skills, which are great because we can then have these chain around multiple enemies, which will set up Shock. Now, once we have Shocked rolling, we want to keep that going. With things like Shocking Touch here, if this wasn't going to take that target out, would have been a good choice because then it would have ended up stunning it here. So what you could do is also, if you had the action points, nether swap and pop that there, because using the Shocking Touch is quite nice. But we also got like the Electric Discharge here, which the path is blocked, unfortunately. So I guess I will just use the Shocking Touch here on this target and take them out. But yeah, it's typically best to go for the crowd control. And then if you have a summoner here, they can also set up and stun targets just like that. So another nice thing is using something like the, again, Summoner is such a good complement to every build because it has its own restoration. It's got Battering Ram here. It's got a bunch of different attacks, which will do water damage on the targets here. And then also has that range attack too, which is just really nice for being able to get in there. Although it's not part of this build, it's a nice complement. And as mentioned, it's nice to have rain scrolls on standby, and these are really cheap and easy to find at a lot of places just because one action point costs to set up the rain again if it's on a cooldown for us, and then that lets us chain it into other things like the superconductor there with a bit more damage. So yeah, you can get the stuns off on enemies just like that. So there's a powerful beast build in Divinity Original Sin 2. If you got any questions, feel free to leave them below. Let me know what kind of DOS content you'd like to see next, and I hope you guys all have an amazing day. We'll catch you in the next one.